Hello and welcome to today's video. So something I'm asked about a lot on this channel is how I protect and store my books. Now, you've seen how I store them. I've done multiple videos where I've done shelving and you've had a good look and you see how my books generally are stored, but I've not really shown much about how I protect my various book collections, and that's what we're going to be having a look at today. So sit back, relax, and let's get to it. Okay, so the first thing I wanted to have a look at really was paperback bagging. So I am a big paperback fan, as you know, and my books are in they're just not uniform. I've got plenty that are bagged, unbagged, and well, they predominantly are, they're completely unbagged, and that's not really great because depending on the environment that you store your books in, over time they're just going to get a bit dusty. Now, I've spent a lot of time going through my book collection and cleaning them and sometimes polishing the covers and making them look as lovely as possible. And the thing is, in a lot of cases, unless the book's a real rarity, I just like to be able to pull it from the shelf and sit down and read it. I don't want to be unbagging it and going through a bit of a palaver when I just want to dip in and out of a particular book. But my book collection nowadays is stored in a really dry environment, and that's absolutely key. You don't want your books to be like stored in a garage or somewhere where there's likely to get a bit of damp inside or mustiness, because over time that will affect your books. If you do temporarily have to have books in that sort of an area and not inside your home, then I would recommend having a dehumidifier on the go pretty much round the clock, just to keep all that moisture coming out of the air and keep your book collection nice and cool. But there are many other reasons to do it. I mean, even now, I will have, over time, layers of dust will land on the top of books, and I have to go back every year or so. I try and go across the top of my bookshelves with a little nozzle on my vacuum cleaner, and I just suck up the dust that may have just accumulated, because I've spent a lot of time getting my books into a great state. But over the years, certain books, either for display or for protection because they're like delicate or expensive, I have dabbled with different ways of protecting them, and I thought I'd go through a few today and give you a few examples of how I've historically done it. So the very first way I used to do it was these. So this is like a plastic miler bag, and these were touted as paperback milers, and this is an American one here, and you can see it's like a very stiff plastic, and it protects the book, yes, but hardly, it's got these big flaps on the end, but the jacket really pops because it's under this miler sleeve here. And these were originally designed for museums and archives, and very popular with comic book collectors, of course. So I still have a few books that are done in this sort of style bag, just because I like to stand them up on the bookshelf, and they just look really fantastic when they're on the shelf. So that is definitely one way that I've done it, but long term, I've had this bag for about 20 years, and it's actually dying a bit of a death now, so that has to come out. With a rare penguin, for example, like this one here, this is quite a scarce little wartime one. It's not exactly expensive, but all I've done, I've popped this one in a comic bag, which sometimes I trim them down so that they're not overly big, and I've just folded over the edges like so, and I've bagged it that way. And one of the key things, by putting the flap over, because it's comic book width, I've used it to fold over, but I can still see the spine. Now that is absolutely key, because here is a book which is in a normal sort of comic bag, Panic Party here. Once again, it's quite a rare one, but this is a purpose designed paperback bag. But because paperbacks are different sizes, they're not uniform like, say, comics. This would have fitted an A-format book, which is a lot thicker, and then it would have filled it up. But, I suppose I could sort of fold the spine back like that, would be all right. But generally, it just doesn't look that great. The seam of the bag is on the spine there, and that stops you really looking at it, and it takes away the eye appeal, I think, when they're actually on the shelf. So that, I don't think, is that good, and I would rebag that and put it into something like that. Here's another example. This is a real rarity, and this one's been bagged the same way. It's just gone into a comic bag, and I've just sort of cut it down again just to give it that protection that it needs. It doesn't look spectacular, but it is at least bagged up. It's better than not being bagged at all, because it's quite a fragile one. So those are some of the ways that historically I have sort of looked after my book collection, but by far, on the whole, almost everything is actually just, on the shelf as published. It's been cleaned, so the books look good, but they're just sat on the shelf, and I can pull one out and read it whenever I like. But, perhaps that's not the best way. So we'll look now at different ways to actually bag them up. Okay then, so we'll take this one out, which is in one of those like American style paperback bags. I said they look nice because they got that sort of shiny sort of surface. They're like a mylight. I think these are polypropylene, but they're like little mylights per se. But this one, I mean, it's just a scarce penguin. This isn't the best condition copy by any means, but ask many penguin collectors and they'll say they'd just be glad to have any copy because it's one of those real rarities. So what I would do with this, because it does deserve the bagging treatment here, is pop it in, make sure there's no corners turned over, first of all, like this. And then the way I do it, I've got my tape dispenser here. I haven't got magic tape, which in actual fact is what I would usually recommend for this sort of a job, because it's easy to open and unseal the bags. Some comic bags I've got actually have a little strip, so you just pull the strip and it actually sort of self-seals, which isn't bad. So I've got the one in the middle there, and then I would fold it to the end. I'll put another little bit of tape on the end. I'll find the end bit here, and then another small bit over that end. So that keeps it sort of angled and square. Now, I'm absolutely fine to have it folded over like that, because I can still read the spine, and that's what's important to me. But if you had it in a traditional sort of a paperback fitted bag, there would be that line across there, which I really, really don't like. So I'm more than happy just to give it a bit of air, squeeze the air out, a bit of pressure on it. So that's lying nice and flat now. And don't forget, once you've got these on the shelf and it's surrounded by its neighbours, they'll keep it in place anyway. So literally, that to me is absolutely fine. That's going to protect the book. I don't mind having these little edges here, because when it gets touched and that, it's not banging the book if I'm popping it in and out of the shelf. So that to me is a good way of just protecting your very rarest books. If you don't like the little flap over, you can either cut it down, or you can just put like another, which I have done on some of mine, pop another bit of tape there, and it just keeps it flat, so it'll slide in like that. So there's lots of ways of doing it. I've actually seen some collectors, they've got paperback bags, and they've not sealed them down. So they're purpose-fit paperback bags. They've got, say, the first 500 penguins on a list, in a row rather, with the bags on top, so they can still pull them out, but it's given the books that extra level of protection, and the covers just aren't going to catch on anything like that, which I think is not a bad little plan. So I mean, it's the only problem is I've got too many books to do this for all my books. I've just got too many, and not all of them warrant it. Some of them more cheap and cheerful, they just don't want it. But something like this, a thin little penguin. These are all like wartime ones. The paper is so thin, they're very, very easily damaged, and it just gives the book that extra little bit of rigidity and a little bit more protection, and I think it makes all the difference. What is really nice is if you take a really mint book and put it in one of these, boy oh boy does it really shine. Now, there was one other area of protection that I wanted to show you before we move on to hardbacks, and it's these cases here. So these are like plastic cases that have been designed specifically for books. This is like an A format one, and this is for a B format book as well. All right, and they're very, very gorgeous. I think they're absolutely lovely, and these are just like precursors to, they're prototypes for something that may be coming along. Now, these are made by GW Acrylic, and they're most famous for doing these cases for action figures, where they got a sliding sort of bottom on here. If I can pull mine out. There we are. So they've got a sliding bottom on the thing. You slide your figure in and then seal it back up again. And they've got little guidelines there to keep the figure in place. So these sort of cases are an offshoot of that, really. It's a similar sort of design, but they make your collectibles look absolutely fantastic, as you can see. This is my little original R2-D2 from back in the day, but we've taken the same principle and we've got cases for books, which is something which is quite a novel idea, but I think it's actually good. So this is like one which is specifically designed for the larger B format, but just to show you that they are being worked on. But this is one which is for an A format. So if you take if you take my copy of Bright and Rock, you can see it's like a perfect fit here, and slide it in. As I said, these are just prototypes, so I would imagine if they do go to production, there'll be different levels of thickness on these, you know, so you'll be able to get one which is just the right size. But you can see dimension wise that's absolutely perfect, and look at that. I mean, it really does elevate what is a beautiful copy of Brighton Rock to another level. You can clearly see the spine, but you could have that sort of sat on your shelf, and it's almost like an Oscar, isn't it? It's absolutely gorgeous, absolutely amazing. So I just wanted to show you that as something which is, you know, potentially it's being worked on at the moment. If I try something a lot more modern, that was from the 1940s. This it's a 70s copy of this J.G. Ballard. Literally, it's anything you put in it, they just look absolutely $1 million, don't they? Now, these cases are not likely to be cheap. The ones for the Star Wars figures work out about £10 each, but because of the value of the actual figures, £10 to actually protect it isn't that bad. Now, this book here, in fact, all the books we've seen are actually quite a bit expensive. This book here, this Crash, is probably, you know, £35. So whether you'd want to splash out a fiver, if it was one of your favourite books and you wanted to just stand it up on display in your collection, well, you know, I can see the attraction of that, and I'd love to get maybe 100 of these and put some of my 100 best books out in these cases. Absolutely gorgeous. Look at that. They're brilliant, aren't they? They are absolutely brilliant. So yeah, I'd want at least 100 of these. You know, simple as that. But I would want them, because I've got lots of thin wartime ones, I would want them in a couple of different sizes, which I'm sure will be possible because the Star Wars ones come in different sizes, you know. So the book I am actually going to keep in this one is probably my most expensive paperback, which is this copy of Ariel. So this was a Penguin proof of the very first book. So as you probably know, Ariel is a biography, so it came in Penguin's blue covers rather than the green. But when Alan Lane was touting the Penguin books as an entity to different organisations, he printed up a proof of this one in the crime colours instead. There's only 3 copies known of this Penguin in existence that I know of. So I know myself and 2 other collectors who've got one. And that's it. Penguin themselves don't have one. There isn't one at the British Library either. So it's definitely a real sort of rarity. And that one, I just want to make sure it just does fit in. I don't want to put any sort of pressure on it. Because it's a test one, I think the dimensions are ever so slightly too big for it. In which case, I might leave it out. Yeah, I'm not going to push that because it's a bit too tight. So I'm going to bag that one instead. So what shall I put in it? Well, I think we'll put the J.G. Ballard back in, because that did look rather beautiful, didn't it? And I think while we're here, I shall bag up the 2 those other 2 penguins that I've got. So we'll leave it at that. Right, yes, gorgeous, but I don't want that ever to be not in a bag, and the ones that I had it in were not particularly good, so I've got another bag here for this one. I've never sort of looked inside this one. It is incredibly rare. Mine's actually got a bit of writing inside, I seem to remember. Yeah, got a bit of writing in there. Look at this. A passage is semi-underlined. I wonder who wrote that. But yeah, this one's probably my most expensive book. Now, this is a different sort of bag. This is a comic bag that's already got a sticky strip on, so you can pull that off like that and just fold the edge down like that. And we just need to get the air out of it. But we want to do it that way so that the spine still looks good, like that. So yeah, the air is coming out slowly but surely. I think because it's one of the ones that's completely sealed, it's hard for the air to escape. But there we are. I think that's going to be all right. Don't forget, it's going to be amongst my other penguins. So I'll have, I've got 3 other copies of number 1 in various editions. So there we are. The main thing is it's protected. I don't want to ever have to risk, you know, damaging this one, even by accident. There we are. That's absolutely fine. And while we're here, I think I shall do Bright and Rock as well. So I'll pull another bag out from my little stash here. There we go. So this one isn't a sealer one. This is one where I seal it down myself. And of course, by having these are just regular comic bags, you know, you don't need to buy anything special at all. I would just buy, you know, Ultra Pro is a great brand. The Collector's brand is another one. I mean, there's loads and loads of different ones, and they're all very, very similar. They're all, they all do the same trick ultimately, you know. But basically, if you've got a rare book, you know, for like a tenner, you can buy a pack of 100 bags, and you're just going to potentially save yourself a lot of anguish and worry if you are worried about potentially damaging some of your books. You know, you don't want that to be happening. There we are. You don't want that to happen. So a little bit of outlay will make all the difference. And you know, that's really, really nice. That I absolutely love that one. So that's sort of the paperback bagging done. But I did also want to mention about hardbacks. So there's a few different ways to bag your hardbacks, or protect your hardbacks, I should say. So let's get those now. Okay, so the way I tend to do almost all my hardbacks is with a plastic wrap that I've got. Now, the plastic wrap is almost like what florists use. And what I do, I wrap the dust wrapper around it and just fold it over like so. And then that protects the dust wrapper really, really nicely. So let me go and get that wrap now. Okay, so here it is. So this is like, it comes in these big thick rolls. So they last ages. They're about £18 for a roll, but it's like pure mylar, and it's absolutely gorgeous. So I have actually done a video where I've shown how I apply these plastic sleeves. So once again, I'll link to that one in the description down below. But as you can see, you just take the book out of its dust wrapper, lay it down, cut the mylar to size and fold it over. Really, I mean, it really isn't rocket science at all, but it makes the books look fantastic like that. So that's definitely the way that most of my hardbacks have been protected. Now, but not all of them. So here's another one here where I've done a similar technique. But because the book's smaller, I've actually folded the edge over there as well, like that. That one's been price clipped, but this is it's Dick Francis's second book, and I'm trying to collect all the Dick Francis with in signed editions. This one's not signed, but it's got a signed like publicity still inside, which is my way of trying to put together a signed one. There's another example of how I do mine. Now this one is Flashman. Now this is the first Flashman book by George MacDonald Fraser, and this one's in what they call a Brodart sleeve. So it's basically, it's got the like a backing, a white backing to it, which is fine if you've got a really nice jacket. This particular jacket is notorious for finding in high grade, and usually the spine is very much faded. I really recommend this. I haven't quite got the full set in first yet, but I'm not that far off. There's only 12, and I think I need about 3. And then I'm going to do a video on the full set in hardback. But this is a Brodart one, and it was so nice. I didn't feel the need to re-jacket it. But basically, you fold the Brodart over to size with a dust wrapper underneath, and it's just like a perfect sort of fit. So that's another way to do it. And of course, one other way, and I'll do this for this particular one. Here's another Dick Francis that I haven't wrapped yet. But I do see collectors do this quite a bit, is they just, rather than like me, because what we've seen with those hardbacks, I can just pull the book off the shelf, I'd probably take the dust wrapper off it, but then I could sit and read it. But what I see a lot of book collectors do, they actually completely bag up their hardbacks, which this one's been cleaned, so it's ready to be having a plastic sleeve put on, which is what ultimately I'm going to do. I'm trying to get a signed set of the Francis. This was another signed one. This is his 5th novel, Odds Against. Really like the early Dick Francis books. So what some collectors would do, they could still get a comic bag, because I believe it will be big enough. So I've got my bag of bags here. Is that going to be big enough? Looks good to me. And as a temporary measure, because what I tend to do when I have a session doing book jackets, I tend to do about 10 at a time. And in the video, if you do want to go and watch it, I think I do about 4 or 5 in a run, so you get the idea of how to do it. So all I need to do is just fold it over, a bit like the comic bag, the paperback situation. I do one in the middle, then I slide it to the end, but do one on the end and just fold it over. Same over here, so the book was, or the bag was on squarely. Now, this is the bit I don't like, because it does cover a little bit of the spine if I fold it over. But I need to do it that way, because if I do it that way round, then you've got the seam of the bag on the side there, and I would prefer not to see that. So I fold it that way, pinch it back, and that's the side that I will fold over. But as I said, this is very much just a temporary measure. I usually fold the ends over like this. Very much a temporary measure until the book goes into a mylar sleeve, which is what I'll do when I've got a few to do. I tend to have a little session and do them that way. But once again, I've seen lots of collectors do that, and if you do that with your hardbacks, they are not going to get damaged at all, because they're completely encapsulated, as long as they're in the right environment where it's not super hot. The only thing you really need to keep an eye on is you don't want to leave it in this bag for like decades. That's the problem. And I have seen that happen, and the bags have got, over time, the bags start to degrade. Mylars and the mylar material you're okay on, but bags over time will degrade, and then they'll start to affect what they're actually protecting, and it will have a reverse effect. So I wouldn't recommend this for long-term storage, but for short-term, a year or two, I think that's absolutely the way to go. So there you go. I hope you enjoyed that little look at my bagging techniques and ideas about bagging and storing your collection. If you've got any other ideas, do please leave them in the comments below. If you've enjoyed this video, do give it the thumbs up. If you've not already, do please hit that subscribe button for regular vintage book and paperback content, and I'll look forward to seeing you again very soon. Bye.